Joe Biden not really knowing all the facts, and here are the facts from the Council of Economic Advisors. The Bureau of Labor Statistics released its monthly employment situation report. In September, the United States added 661,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate fell to 7.9%. In August, this was at 8.4%. In the last 5 months, 52% of the job losses from the pandemic have been recovered, and the United States has gained more than 11.4 million jobs, including a combined upward revision in July and August of 145,000 jobs. Although this year has not been easy, the grit of the American worker has not wavered, and we are in the midst of the fastest economic recovery in American history. Since the recovery began in May, job gains have been concentrated in low-earning industries, which employ a large portion of minorities as well as those without college degrees, such as retail trade and leisure and hospitality. While the losses in the sectors were the steepest, swiftest, targeted action to keep workers connected to their employers has been a catalyst to recovery. Every private sector industry posted jobs gains for September, and leisure and hospitality and retail trade increased the most, with gains of 318,000 and 142,000 respectively. In fact, 51% of all jobs losses in from February to April occurred in either the leisure and hospitality industry or the retail trade industry, which have average hourly wages below national average. Since then, more than 4.5 million jobs have returned in the leisure and hospitality sector, and nearly 1.9 million have returned in the retail trade sector. These, in conjunction with the education and health services sector, which added 40,000 jobs in September, account for 68% of job gains since April. Blue-collar workers have experienced strong recoveries in recent months as expansions continue in the manufacturing and construction industries. Since their losses through April, manufacturing has recovered more than half of its losses, while construction has rebounded by 2/3 with combined gains of more than 1.4 million jobs. This administration remains committed to workers previously left on the margin. Joe is right about one thing, though, and that is that corporate America has gained while the little man has lost in small business. But you cannot put that on President Trump. That is on the governors that keep their states closed. Much not aligned with President Trump's agenda for opening the country back up. That is on them, not on our president.
Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more.
Let's do a little bit of math here for the liberals in the back. Total number of cases in the United States as of October the 4th is 7,600,846. The total number of deaths is 214,277, which is 3% total death cases out of the number of people who have contracted coronavirus. The number of recoveries is 4,818,509. Total cases, 63% recovery rate. And this is just of people who have contracted COVID. Once you take the U.S. population, which as of January the 1st of 2020 was 330,222,422, dividing the number of cases by the total population of the United States, that is 0.43% of the entire American population that has contracted COVID-19. And that is why the economy must open fully and stay open, Joe.
Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools, why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely.
I could sit here and I could take all the time in the world to go and find all the numbers on COVID rates in children, but it has been highly talked about and highly debated in the public sector. So there's no need for me to do so. And the fact of the matter is that COVID in children is even lower than in adults. COVID in children is one of the least amount in any age demographic in the world. And it's been proven time and time again on TV. I guess in the basement, Joe Biden doesn't have a TV. I guess he doesn't have a newspaper. I guess he doesn't have internet to look at the facts that have been in front of him the entire time about COVID and children.
Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And I built
Sir,
a great
I'm asking
company.
you a specific question, which
But
is...
let me tell you...
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand all of
return.
that. No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid...
There's a few things that you got to look at this New York Times article. And the first thing is that everywhere within the article, there is not a link to the tax returns. So there's no basis for the report. There's no fact checking that can be done on the report. We're just supposed to take it as it is. And with the New York Times and their reputation, it's very hard to do so. Secondly, the tax returns are still an audit. So the New York Times is reporting on something that they got leaked to them, which is a crime in and of itself. And lastly, you have to take a look at the fact that income tax breaks could be in the millions and millions of dollars because of tax credits for building properties. And that is something that is very real, and it's something that needs to be fixed, but it's something that is very real. So the jury is still out on this. There's no possible way that anybody can conclude one way or another about the tax returns because they are not presented in the article.
Because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump's...
They took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look,
Mr.
we
Vice President.
inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. we were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
He blew
booming.
it.
Well, that is what Joe and President Obama wanted the American people to think, is that the economy was booming, but really it was in the opposite direction. And I take you to an article in Forbes magazine, and much of the dates and the timelines that you're going to see in this article, Joe Biden had a heavy hand in Congress for a good portion of that. The operating principles of the big banks is a cesspool of greed, ethics, and criminal intent, and they give a very bad name to free market capitalism. During the housing bubble, Wall Street was considered the heart and soul of free market capitalism, but when they were in danger of total collapse, they fell on their knees as socialists, begging the government and taxpayers to bail them out. Many people have asked why the government bailed them out. Isn't capitalism designed to get rid of the weak and the failed? So why didn't we just let them fail? The answer was that they were too big to fail, and allowing them to fail could have created a worldwide depression. In fact, in a meeting with Congress on September the 18th of 2008, Treasury Secretary Paulson told the members that $5.5 trillion in wealth could disappear by 2 p.m. of that day. In a meeting with Senator Sherrod Brown, Secretary Paulson, and Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke, we need $700 billion, and we need it in 3 days. So how did this all happen? Starting in 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act regulated interest rates, established deposit insurance, and erected a wall between commercial and investment banking by restricting the former from engaging in non-banking activities like securities and insurance. In 1978, a successful legal challenge to the state usury laws and the massive promotion of credit cards by the banks led to dramatic growth of credit card debt by consumers. 1979, pension regulation was loosened, which created a new market for speculation and the capital to feed it. 1980, investors fled conventional interest-bearing accounts to alternatives such as money market, venture capital, and hedge funds, which were lightly regulated. 1982, Congress passed the Garn Street St. Germain Depository Institution Act, which deregulated the savings and loan industry. This led to speculation with other people's money and a crisis which could cost the taxpayer $201 billion. The deregulation of interest rates at conventional banks also led to elimination of bank net worth, accounting standards, and loan-to-value ratio requirements. 1999, Republican Phil Gramm successfully led the effort to repeal most of the Glass-Steagall Act, which was a Depression-era law that kept commercial banking and investment separated. 2000, only a year later, Graham inserted a new Commodity Futures Modernization Act into a must-pass budget bill that rocketed through Congress. One part of this bill would prohibit the regulation of derivatives, which allowed financial gurus to leverage and speculate with other people's money. By using derivatives, credit default swaps, and other unregulated financial instruments, the big banks were able to chop up and resell loans and mortgages as repackaged securities or derivatives. The new securitization became globalized and eventually affected the world economy. After the creation of new financial tools like credit default swaps and derivatives, as well as more access to everybody's money, the banks began to do high-risk gambling just like a big casino. The new financial tools were backed by government so that taxpayers would get hung with the bill. 2007, the speculation and lack of effective regulation eventually led to the crash of the 2007 and the Great Recession. The industry is not afraid to do it again because they know no one goes to jail and the government will bail them out. Why didn't more people know that the bailout had climbed into the trillions? In an article, Secrets and Lies of the Bailout, Matt Taibbi said, "It was all a lie. One of the biggest and most elaborate falsehoods ever sold to the American people. We were told that the taxpayer was stepping in, only temporarily, mind you, to prop up the economy and save the world from financial catastrophe. What we actually ended up doing was the exact opposite, committing American taxpayers to permanent blind support of an ungovernable, unregulatable, hyper-concentrated new financial system that exacerbates the greed and inequality that caused the crash and forces Wall Street banks like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup to increase risk rather than reduce it. After the original $700 billion bailout, the ongoing bailout was kept very secret because Chairman Ben Bernanke argued that revealing borrower details would create a stigma. Investors and counterparties would shun firms that used the central bank as lender of last resort. In fact, $7.7 trillion of the secret emergency lending was only disclosed to the public after Congress forced a one-time audit of the Federal Reserve in November of 2011. After the audit, the public found out the bailout was in the trillions, not billions, and that there were no requirements attached to the bailout money. The banks could use it for any purpose. The big got even bigger. During the bailout, the government also allowed many of the banks to use the bailout money to merge. Chase and Bear Stearns, Wells Fargo and Wachovia, Bank of America with Merrill Lynch. So the result is that they are much bigger today and have become an oligopoly and controls a huge amount of money. The 12 largest banks now control 70% of all the bank's assets. Their favorite tool, derivatives, was taken away by the Dodd-Frank laws, but they cleverly got derivatives back by including them in the bill to fund the government. And derivatives are again backed by the FDIC, so the banks are ready to gamble again. So there you see, Joe Biden's Congress was a big part of setting up the big recession of 2008. And then his vice presidency was a big part in bailing out the big banks and getting them to be even stronger today than they were back then. Joe Biden, I don't think you have a leg to stand on when it comes to economic prowess. And bringing Trump's tax returns to the forefront is definitely a diversion from the tactics that you have used to sink the American people.
They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry. We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year.
This is a 2019 report from Jobs Ohio that says as the decade drew to a close, Ohio saw positive economic trends grow and persist even further. 4.2% unemployment rate as of December 2019. A labor force that is 5.84 million strong, its highest level since 2010, with a growth of about 81,000 from December 18 to December 2019. 4.8 million is a record high private employment, the highest since 2001. Over 960 million in venture capital investments in 2019 alone, the second highest on record. Jobs Ohio in 2019 saw its second best year in terms of project volume and new payroll commitments, and its third best year in terms of capital investment. After a record year in 2018, Jobs Ohio worked hard with new leadership to rebuild its pipeline of potential investments and drive results. The total project pipeline is 88,054 new and retained jobs, $24.4 billion in capital investment, 306 total projects, 22,770 new jobs, a $1.2 billion new jobs payroll, $7 billion capital investment. Ohio is Republican run by Governor Mike DeWine.
Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
And
We are 3 segments into this debate that is almost an hour's worth of content. And this is the first victory that we can find for Joe Biden, because job losses in Michigan in 2019 were highest in 4 years as manufacturing and auto industries falter. Now, what is the reason for that? Biden, just like Republican Governor Mike DeWine in Ohio, got his jobs to record numbers, Michigan is a Democratic governor. So what does that tell you? Maybe President Trump shouldn't have said that about Michigan, but the fact of the matter is that Democrat-run states are having a much worse time with the laws that they have implemented than Republican-run states. That's just the way it is. Joe Biden, you cannot put this on the presidency for victory or defeat. Ohio is Mike DeWine's, and Michigan is the Democrats.
They didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch,
All
down
right, gentlemen,
18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also,
Simply
while
not
we're at
true.
it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million.
That's
What
not
did he
true.
do to deserve it?
That
What
is
did he do with Burisma
none
to
of that-
deserve
Wait, wait,
$183,000?
None
You've
of
asked
that
your
is
question,
true.
let him answer.
None of that is true. It's
Oh, really? He didn't
totally,
get
But no,
$3.5
hey,
million?
Mr. President,
It's
Mr.
totally-
President, please.
totally
ask a question.
discredited. Totally discredited. And
Totally discredited, Joe Biden says. But let's take a look at the documents that just came out recently, a couple of weeks back. The U.S. Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and the U.S. Senate Committee on Finance put out a joint report, Hunter Biden, Burisma, and the corruption and the impact on U.S. government policy and related concerns. So let's just look at it a little closer. Let's look at the summary and let's see just how discredited this report may be. This is the executive summary of that report. In late 2013 and into 2014, mass protests erupted in Ukraine, demanding integration into Western economies and to end to systematic corruption that had plagued the country. At least 82 people were killed during the protests, which culminated on February the 21st when Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych abdicated by fleeing the country. Less than 2 months later, over the span of only 28 days, significant events involving the Bidens unfolded. On April 16th of 2014, Vice President Biden met with his son's business partner, Devin Archer, at the White House. 5 days later, President Biden visited Ukraine, and he soon after was described in the press as the public face of the administration's handling of Ukraine. The day after his visit, on April the 22nd, Devin Archer joined the board of Burisma. 6 days later, on April the 28th, British officials seized $23 million from the London bank accounts of Burisma's owner, Mykola Zalewski. 14 days later, on May the 12th, Hunter Biden joined the board of Burisma. And over the course of the next several years, Hunter Biden and Devin Archer were paid millions of dollars from a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch for their participation on the board. The 2014 protests in Kyiv came to be known as the Revolution of Dignity, a revolution against corruption in Ukraine. Following that revolution, Ukrainian political officials were desperate for U.S. support. Zalewski would have made sure relevant Ukrainian officials were well aware of Hunter Biden's appointment to Burisma's board as leverage. Hunter Biden's position on the board created an immediate potential conflict of interest that would prove to be problematic for both U.S. and Ukrainian officials and would affect the implementation of Ukraine policy. And this is all the investigation. The chairman's investigation into potential conflicts of interest began in August of 2019 with Chairman Grassley's letter to the Department of Treasury regarding potential conflicts of interest with respect to the Obama administration policy relating to Henning's transaction. During the Obama administration, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States approved a transaction that gave control over the Henning's an American maker of anti-vibration technologies with military applications, to a Chinese government-owned aviation company and a Chinese-based investment firm with established ties to the Chinese government. One of the companies involved in the Henniges transaction was a billion-dollar private investment fund called Bohai Harvest RST. BHR was formed in November of 2013 by a merger between Chinese government-linked firm Bohai Capital and a company named Rosemont Seneca Partners. Rosemont Seneca was formed in 2009 by Hunter Biden, the son of then Vice President Joe Biden, by Chris Hines, the stepson of former Secretary of State John Kerry, and others. In early 2015, the former acting deputy chief of mission at the U.S. Embassy of Kyiv, Ukraine, George Kent, raised concerns to officials in Vice President Joe Biden's office about the perception of a conflict of interest with respect to Hunter Biden's role on the Burisma's board. Kent's concerns went unaddressed, and in 2016, in September, he emphasized in an email to his colleagues, furthermore, the presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. In October of 2015, Senior State Department official Amos Hochstein raised concerns with Vice President Biden as well as with Hunter Biden that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board enabled Russian disinformation efforts and risked undermining U.S. policy in Ukraine. Although Kent believed that Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board was awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine, the committees are only aware of two individuals, Kent and former U.S. Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs, Amos Hochstein, who raised concerns to Vice President Joe Biden or his staff. The awkwardness for the Obama administration's officials continued well past his presidency. Former Secretary of State John Kerry had knowledge of Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board, but when asked about it at a town hall event in Nashua, New Hampshire on December the 8th, 2019, Kerry falsely said, "I had no knowledge about any of that. None. No. Evidence to the contrary is detailed in this Section 5. Former Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs Victoria Nuland testified that confronting oligarchs would send an anti-corruption message in Ukraine. Kent told the committees that Zalewski was an odious oligarch. However, in December of 2015, instead of following U.S. objectives and confronting oligarchs, Vice President Biden's staff advised him to avoid commenting on Zalewski and recommended he say, "I'm not going to get into names or accusing individuals." Hunter Biden was serving on Burisma's board, supposedly consulting on corporate governance and transparency, when Zalewski allegedly paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving in Ukraine's Prosecutor General Vitaly Yeremy's to shut the case against Zalewski. Kent testified that the bribe occurred in December of 2014, 7 months after Hunter Biden joined Burisma's board, and after learning about it, he and the resident legal advisor reported this allegation to the FBI. Hunter Biden was a U.S. Secret Service protectee from January 29, 2009 to July 8, 2014, a day before his last trip as a protectee. Time published an article describing Burisma's ramped-up lobbying efforts to U.S. officials and Hunter Biden's involvement in Burisma's board. Before ending his protective detail, Hunter Biden received Secret Service protections on trips to multiple foreign locations, including Moscow, Beijing, Doha, Paris, Seoul, Manila, Tokyo, Mexico City, Milan, Florence, Shanghai, Geneva, London, Dublin, Munich, Berlin, Bogota, Abu Dhabi, Nairobi, Hong Kong, Taipei, Buenos Aires, Copenhagen, Johannesburg, Brussels, Madrid, Mumbai, and Lake Como. Andrei Teleshenko, the Democrats' personification of Russian disinformation, met with Obama officials, including Elizabeth Zentos, a member of Obama's National Security Council, at least 10 times. A Democrat lobbying firm, Blue Star Strategies, contracted with Teleshenko from 2016 to 2017 and continued to request his assistance as recent as the summer of 2019. A recent news article details other extensive contacts between Teleshenko and Obama administration officials. In addition to the over $4 million paid by Burisma for Hunter Biden's and Archer's board memberships, Hunter Biden, his family, and Archer received millions of dollars from foreign nationals with questionable backgrounds. Archer received $142,300 from Kengiz Ragashev of Kazakhstan, purportedly for a car. The same day, Vice President Joe Biden appeared with Ukrainian Prime Minister Arsenij Yatsenyuk and addressed Ukrainian legislators in Kyiv regarding Russia's actions in Crimea. And this one is big. Hunter Biden received a $3.5 million wire transfer from Elena Berderina, the wife of a former Moscow mayor. This report may have been discredited in the mainstream media because, as we know, they are the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. But it is a Senate investigation, and they got to the bottom of a lot of things that have been raised, a lot of questions in the past about Hunter Biden and his contracts with Burisma, the Chinese Communist Party, and now the $3.5 million received from the mayor's wife in Russia, in Moscow. There's nothing to discredit about this Senate investigation hearing. The only person who is discredited from this is Joe Biden and his blatant lies trying to keep his son out of trouble. And Christopher Wallace as well, who tried to help Joe Biden deflect the question. And guys, we're only at part 3. And you see how much this has been just a total fabrication by Joe Biden. Please help make Area 17 great again. Subscribe right here.